We're live?
We're live.
Okay, I like that. Here we are. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, to the YouTube Model Builders Wednesday night show for Wednesday, October 18th, 2017. I'm Big Bill, your host, and tonight we're going to be doing the part 2 of the Into the Locomotive Shop with our special guest, Joe Desmond from Central Jersey, Conrail, and Enscal. And Joe tonight is going to be working on his Milwaukee Road. It's a GP38, and I'll let Joe explain what we're going to be doing.
All right, so tonight in our continuing series here, we're going to be taking it up a step a little further. We're going to be doing a drop-in DCC install on an Atlas GP38. We're going to be doing a couple cab details and real good heavy weathering on this unit. So that's what we have in store for today.
That's great. That's great. And just to give you guys a reminder out there on the YouTube Model Builders, hold on 1 minute. I have guests in the house who are, as you can hear, conversing. Ladies, gentlemen over there.
Sorry guys.
Sorry guys. This is live show, folks. Live in the house.
That's right.
From my living room, his den, his living. I got a mouse in the house. We found out tonight. Anyway, I distract. I just want to welcome everybody to the YouTube Model Builders Show. We saw that Joe Desmond is here for the second installment of the Into the Locomotive Shop. And also just to remind you guys that tomorrow night on the 19th, we have Johnny's Model Train Talk. That's a live show as well, where you can participate and in the community, be on the panel, as well as be in the Q&A as well. And then on the 21st, yours truly and Barry will be back for the live show. And that live show will take place on the 21st of October, this Saturday. And our special guest will be Troy. And if you remember, Troy was with us, I believe, earlier this year. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Earlier this year, and he was showing us his new and updated layout. And all he had was the structure and the wood up. And no track was laid. He kind of gave us a tour of what was going to happen and showed us the schematic of the track. And then on... recently, I had the opportunity of visiting him through a video, and I saw what he had done. He's about 90 to 95% of all his track has been laid. Wow. And it's hand laid, ladies and gentlemen. It's not switches laid and then flex track. It's hand laid track, all of it. And so he's going to show us the update of that. And also a special side guest with him will be Stephen Montgomery. Steve is, as you know, has his own railroad called the Carroll Valley Railroad. And he was on the show 2 times, once to showcase his layout. And if you remember, Steve was on Model Railroad magazine, I think about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. And he also did a switching game with us that he showed us how it worked, and it was pretty interesting. He'll be alongside Troy, because Steve actually built some of the structures that went with for Troy's layout. And Troy's layout is an ON3, I believe. ON3.
No, I think it's HON3.
I'm sorry, please excuse me. HON3 layout, and he's built most of them or some of the structures for it. So he's going to give us some input on how he did it, how he came up with the designs, and give us some background on it. So without further ado, let's go back to Joe so Joe can get started with this GP38 Milwaukee Road and a DCC drop-in and some weathering.
Okay. We ready?
Yes.
Well, the video's queued up here, so let me fade her in. Here we go. Alright, video's going. Alrighty, so I just paused the video now so you can give a little description of what we're talking about tonight.
Okay, so this month I stepped out of my comfort zone. So I'm a big avid Conrail modeler, and I wanted to do something a little different. So it's October, picked something a little orange to go with a pumpkin, and we picked some Milwaukee Road unit. So what you need to realize is before you get going is we do a little research, we start looking at statistics and all that, and you really start to get an understanding of where you're headed with this project. So first off, we're working with a GP38. You need to know that they were built by the EMD Corporation between January 1972 and January of 1986. They were a 2,000 horsepower road switcher, and there was approximately 2,222 units produced. So I don't know without going on and looking at Google, I think it was probably one of the more prevalent road switchers that was produced. So now, through our research, we got to look at Milwaukee Road. So Milwaukee Road was on their third bankruptcy in 1977. They were down on their luck. They were sold to the Sioux Line in the bankruptcy decision in 1985, and then they were merged in 1986. So we also found out that Milwaukee Road had 16 GP38s, and they were number 350 to 365. Pardon me. Now, why these numbers are these numbers of these units are important, because some manufacturers get their numbers incorrect. So I always like to do a fact check before we get going. So if we know we need to change the unit number, we can do that before we get going. The other thing we want to know is that Milwaukee Road was done. They were on their way out in 77. So I'm trying to stick with the period of right before 1985-84. That these are the down on their luck units. They're rode hard and put away wet and really dirty. So that's kind of why we get to do all this information, so we know where we're going with this project. So, all right, so we'll go ahead and kick it back off.
All righty. Video's back on. We're on the testing bench.
All right, so as with all my projects, I like to go to my workbench, get out my handy test track, and run it in analog mode. That's DC power. Because this is another unit straight out of the box, brand new from Atlas, so we want to just check it, make sure everything runs freely, there's no squealing or anything that we need to abnormal that we need to worry about as we're working on this project. And as you can see, it works very well. So now that we tested and we know we got a known good locomotive, we're going to go ahead and get into our disassembly. This unit, as I started disassembling, you'll start to see there's a lot of, it came apart very easily. It wasn't as tight as our switcher that we worked on last month. There was a lot of oil on this one. So we had to do a lot of cleaning, and you'll see even when we get to painting, it was almost like staining from the oil. So but we worked with it, and we were able to cover it up. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off that light shield and get that out of our way. Some of these light shields, they got a little like a little stickiness for like tape or something, so you got to kind of work at them, get them to pop off. Then I'm going to go ahead and loosen up my screws on my frame. Don't forget, with these Atlas units, they got those plastic nuts on them, so if they fall out, just make sure you put them back in there. I'm going to kick that fuel tank out of our way. Now, with this unit was so tight, I had to go in there and release them top tabs on the motor mounts so that we get some play in the chassis. You can see that third hand there. That was my helper for the day. Caitlin, she was trying to get some tools. And we'll just, now that we've released it, we pop it and it comes open. And we're going to pull that. Yeah, I'm having a little difficulty here. There we go. We got enough play, and we're going to pull that light board out. Generally speaking, I usually keep these light boards. Some people might have a tendency to just throw them away, but if you ever want to sell them back, and it's kind of a selling point for a second-hand locomotive, that they have the light board so they can convert it back to DCC or DC, because not everybody uses DCC. So I pulled our trucks out, and we're going to go ahead and pop these side frames off. This truck was giving me just a difficult time. It took a little oomph to get that thing apart. It's amazing something so small is so stiff. So we got the first one out, and then we're going to the second one. The second one just pops out real easy.
How much patience do you have to for this?
Oh, so much. There was a lot of that. It's on. We muted it, so there's a lot of cursing going on right now. And you know, you got to have patience because you want to struggle and get it off, and your tendency to just rip it off. But then you'll pop them tabs and break them tabs, and then you got to buy new trucks, and you know, so it's just you just got to grin and bear it.
Yeah, I could understand that. I mean, working in, I mean, N scale, a great compression to scenery, trackage, but just so, my big fat finger sausage hands could never do this.
So now we got it apart. I'm going to put all of our parts that we need. I'm going to put it in my Chinese food container up there. And I keep saying Chinese food container, but you guys can use anything, any little plastic container. You throw them away all the time. Keep them. Put them on your bench. All right, so now we're going to get into painting. First thing we're going to do is we're going to paint our trucks. Now this time, what I did is a little something different than last time. I went with a 2-color paint job on these trucks and tank. My base coat is a grimy black with thinned down with about 5 drops of isopropyl alcohol. And then my secondary coat was an earth. I used an earth tone with some alcohol. And I'll point that out when we get to the earth tone. I shot it at a different angle. So here I'm just using the grimy black to get coverage. And again, you know, take your time. Lots of movement, not a whole lot of heavy on the paint because you don't want to hide up all them details. Don't be afraid to do 2 or 3 coats if you need it.
You just regularly basically popping the details out, correct?
Oh yes, and this just, it's amazing when you hit it with this flat paint, how all them details in that truck that Atlas made, as it just pops out on you. And we're gonna hit the fuel tank. This fuel tank is just, I was taking my time to work around the sight glass and the emergency shutoff because I don't want to have to repaint that, so I kind of just made sure I worked around that. Got the ends on this tank here because the ends of this fuel tank kind of hang out and you can see it on the model, so I made sure to do the ends so it didn't stick out. Now we're doing a second coat real quick. Just, you know, put it back in my block and I'll let it dry for the afternoon. Because I'm doing 2 coats, I didn't let it sit overnight like before. You can see there it is. We got some nice even coverage.
Yeah, I know the video doesn't do it justice, but you can actually see the you know, yeah, see when you turned it there, you can actually see it pop out. It's really
so now I got my earth tone loaded up in my brush for 4 drops of isopropyl alcohol. Now I'm going to be shooting this upward. So try to think of a locomotive going down the tracks and all that mud's kicking up. So that's why I'm spraying in an upward direction from the bottom.
Right.
And real light mist, down to 20 pounds on my my compressor. And I'm giving the brush all 20 pounds, but I'm just varying my flow of my my paint by pulling back on it. Bring a little closer shot so you can see the difference.
You can see it right from there.
Yeah, that earth tone really gives it a whole nother look than just that grimy black. And we'll do the same with the fuel tank. Now with the fuel tank, don't forget, you want to get them ends because we're thinking spraying up. The wheels are rotating and they're kicking up mud and debris. And we'll get the ends too, the side of the tank. So if that's, you know, so if when it's on the model, you can see those ends. So I want to make sure I hit those.
Now that ends, they stick out, right? When that's put back together, right? So
yeah, you could see those. Not, you know, from our last month, the little MP15, you couldn't really see that tank so much because it's such a small chassis. But the GP38-2, you can see it more. It sticks out a little more. And again, with this one, I'm doing lots of Lots of passes on real lightly because I don't want to glob it up. I don't want to ruin the effect I'm looking for.
Right.
And notice this one did it. I had to go back and do a second shoot on this because this paint had a tendency to kind of dull out when it dried. You know, it looked good when it was wet, but then once I let it dry in the booth, it kind of lost its effect. So I'm going back and just doing another light coat. So keep that in mind when you're working with your paints. Don't be afraid to go back.
What paints do you use?
Oh, I'm sorry. We're using all Model Flex. That's yeah.
Tony Bowen, Joe, what kind of airbrush do you use? I may have missed it if you mentioned it.
No, I didn't mention. I forgot. The Badger 155. That's the internal mix, dual action internal mix.
I'm on mute, honey. Oh, there's an outlet right there.
Do you after you do that with the painting with the airbrush, Joe? Do you put any powder on that?
We will at the as we go to reassemble the trucks. So as you can see here, it actually bronzed up that creamy black.
Right. I was just going to say. I'm sorry for skipping ahead, Joe.
That's okay. All right. So now we're going to move into the details on our unit. So doing my research, I looked at tons of pictures on Milwaukee Road units because I didn't know nothing about it going into this project, and I found out that Milwaukee Road like to use firecracker antennas on all of their units, and that were radio equipped. Some of their road units had 2 firecracker antennas. Most of the SD units, SD38s, the SD42s, and then also. Probably 90% of the pictures I found, all the Milwaukee Road units had a big old gumball light on the top. So a big old rotating beacon. So that's what I'm working with here. All these details you see here are from Miniatures by Eric out of Canada. I had a lot of problems finding some good details here, and I was able to find his site, and he's got some really nice stuff. This rotator beacon, what I did was I painted it with a tester silver for the first coat, and then I went over it with that turn signal amber, which is like a translucent yellow, and it came out really well. What I'm going to say here in this picture, as you're saying, you're like, it doesn't look that great, but I went back after I got it mounted and I did a second application of the turn signal amber, so it turned out a lot better.
Where did you get it from? What was the name of the site?
It's going to be Miniatures by Eric.
Eric, E-R-I-C.
E-R-I-C, yes. The gentleman's out of Canada. I think it was Ontario, Canada, I believe.
Okay. Just want to know so we can put it in the description on the video afterwards if anybody wants to go get it.
So the rotator beacon had a big post on it. I had to do a 1/16 inch hole on this. So I was actually outside of the range of my little drill index. And then the little firecracker antenna, I'm using a number 68 to get it in there. And then what we do is, like, I'm just going to hold the detail in on the roof and flip it over, and I'm going to put a drop of CA, cryolanic adhesive, or however you say that word.
Pretty good, actually.
Thank you. And I just put a drop in there, and then I'll sit it on the bench and let it sit. See, we're working on day 2 now. I let them. I'm sorry. We're still on the evening of day 1, so I'm putting all the details on it. I'm going to let it sit overnight, and let the CA harden up real good, and let the trucks and the tank dry. So as you can see, I was very impressed with this rotator beacon. It just really touched off the model. Yeah,
it did. Now, the Miniatures by Eric, does he just do N scale, or does he do all types of things?
You know, let's pause the video, Barry. You know, Bill, I can't remember from being on his site. I know he had a ton of N-scale stuff and really like off-the-wall stuff, you know, like the air hoses and the rotator beacons. And you get what I really liked about his site or his stuff is you don't just get one rotator beacon. On a tree, you get 3 different styles. You get the old 70s style square one. You get the little bump, the gumball light, and you get a little strobe too. So he's got a really, and the quality is really nice. I think there was a little bit of flashing that I had to trim off, but otherwise everything looked really good.
They all cast in plastic or metal?
You know, Barry, I thought they were plastic, but when I went to go cut it with the X-Acto knife, I broke a blade. It's so hard. I had to use sprue nippers to cut them off.
It must have been metal then, yeah.
But it didn't look like white metal. It had like a greenish tint to it. So I don't really know what they are. I got to go back on the website and look. I thought they were plastic or resin, but then when I went to go cut it, I'm like, this is super hard. We got any questions so far?
Well, IXO Pop, according to his site, he has NHOO and G detailed parts, so that's good to know.
Thank you, IXO Pop. It's one of my followers. All right, so anything else?
No, nothing is. Nobody's inquired about anything. Inquiring minds have not asked anything.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start it up, Barry.
All right, we're in the spray booth here.
All right, so first thing I made sure to do was to go ahead and mask off all the windows with painter's blue tape. I just find it easier. You know, a lot of guys last time recommended the masking solution and all that, but I just really like the painter's tape. I just lay it out, do it real quick, and it was done. And our first base coat here on this shell, we're going to be using the sand, the real diluted down sand. I put about 7 drops of isopropyl alcohol, and we're just looking to fade this paint. That's really what this step is for. So I'm just going in, and you could see, like even from back here, you could see that black. Once it hits that black, it just really tones down the black.
Yeah, definitely.
This was a fun unit to do. I really enjoyed this project.
Now, will this be part of your on your layout, part of your roster?
No, actually, this is for a buddy. This is for Matt. Matt Jones. He's my friend, and I owed him a favor, so I'm just doing this for him.
He's a big Milwaukee Road guy.
Yeah, he's originally from Wisconsin, and so he does Milwaukee Road, a couple other of the, I think, Sioux Line, and all the stuff up there in Wisconsin.
I love the paper towel holder. That's a great tool, cheap, easy to use.
Yeah, that is a good trick.
I've been going. I told my wife, I said, listen, don't be throwing out any more paper towel rolls. Just throw them down the stairs and I'll get them at the layout room. So I went down the other night. There was like 10 of them down by the bottom of the stairs. So I got a nice big box full. I mean, you could go, Micro Mart has all them nice clamping mechanisms and stuff, but you know, we just use it once, we get it all crudded up, and we throw it away. I left this step in there for everybody because I know there's a lot of questions on it last time. This is me changing colors. So this is my clean out process after I'm done with the shoot of the color. So I have a little bottle of clean water on standby, and I just put it in there and I shoot the whole thing into that little pot.
Is that a badger cleaning station?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I know Hiawatha has something just like that. So
all we were doing here was just fading it out, just making it a little dull. Now we're going in. I'm going back with the earth tone. These Milwaukee Road units, all these pictures I saw, these things were just dirty, not just soot and road grime, but just mud. I guess there must have been a certain section on the Milwaukee Road where these units were just going through, kicking up all kinds of mud. So that's what I'm trying to achieve here, is just give it a little muddy look on the low ends, on the pilot steps, the plow, the side sills. So again, I diluted this earth tone down about 7 drops. I got my airbrush set up to about 30 pounds, and I'm just real far back, and I'm just shooting at different angles. So we're pausing here, and I don't remember why I stopped. I think, I was having a problem with my brush. I didn't like the pattern. The pattern wasn't coming out as well, so I stopped, pulled the tip off, and sure enough, there was a big old chunk of paint in there. So
I hate when that happens.
Yeah.
So he's got to keep an eye on this stuff. I mean, because you'll ruin a good model if you're not paying attention and watching your brush.
Yeah, absolutely.
That just looks amazing like that.
Hey, Mike.
So we're just going in, I'm touching up. What I'm doing here is I'm looking for the shadows of the handrails. So that's why I keep moving this in these odd angles, is because I just want to get this mud down in there on the running boards and hide those post shadows from shooting it far away.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So there it is. That's with the sand and the earth tone. And I also, yes, I also touched up the beacon here because it was a little dirty. So after I shot it, I put another coat on there, so it's nice and good.
Looks very good, very well.
Thank you. Now, I'll give you a little hint here. I wasn't happy with the tip of the nose. The nose came out a little too orange with too much earth. But I didn't fret over it. I just let it dry, and we're going to correct that later, and I'll show you how we corrected it. So that's what you want to keep in mind. If you have a little spot you don't like, just let it dry, and you can always fix it later, and I'll show you. So first thing we're going to do is before we reassemble our trucks, we're going to head and I'm going to put some powders on these trucks just to touch them up just a little bit more because I want to bring out a little more detail and get a little more variation in colors. So that's pretty much the theme here this month is we're doing multiple layers, more layers than last month. Last month was just one. This time we're doing two. So that's what you got to keep in mind when you're weathering these locomotives is the more layers, the better, because then you get that dynamic look and you don't see the spraying so much from your airbrush, because when you get to in scale, okay, when you're shooting airbrushing and weathering in HO scale and you look at it from afar, you may not notice it, but in in scale, when you zoom in for these pictures and stuff, you really see them splatter marks from your brush. So just by doing multiple layers, you can kind of soften that up a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm trying to convey here. Make sure when we're doing this here, we want to do this before we put these trucks back together, because once you get these trucks together and you start putting all these pastels in there, it's going to just get super dirty, super caked up, and you're just going to make more work for yourself.
Yeah, because that could get into the gears and the pickups and everything.
Exactly, Barry. And it just you'll have a nice smooth running locomotive. You'll go and put your powders on, and next thing you know, it's jerking and squealing. It's because it's all just gummed up. So we are on day 3 now. This is the next day. I'm doing the reassembly. Pardon me. These little trucks, gotta just go with it. You know, these little pickups fall out. It's not a big deal. Don't be afraid of it. Just get in there, put them back on, pinch it, hold it like that, and you just slide it back into the side frame, and it pops right in. Make sure when you're putting these Atlas trucks together, you want to listen for the audible clicking. Those 4 little pins pop in there that you want to make sure it clicks. You can actually hear it, and because if not, then nothing's together right, and it's not going to run freely.
Now, on the powders, what powders do you use on that?
We're using the Bragdon Enterprises weathering powders. I use those pretty exclusively. So I just give the truck. I'm just giving that truck a little free rolling to check it, make sure it's running. Here we're using the Digitrax DN163A0. This is the Digitrax recommended board for the Atlas GP38-2. So let me preface this next scene here with this. I've been using Digitrax for a long time, and normally when you get a drop-in board, you get them 2 brass motor contacts, you put the board right in the frame, squeeze it, pop it in. This is the first one I noticed that they changed. I think they put a change in the instruction manual. So when I zoom in, you'll notice there's 2 little square holes in this board. What they wanted you to do on this install is put them little brass tabs up through the board and fold them over. I've been doing this now for 10 years, never had to do that. I don't know if it's a change or maybe I wasn't paying attention in the past. I don't know. But let me tell you, this was the most difficult part of this whole project, was getting these little tabs through these holes.
I just want to make a comment here, Joe. Ralph Renzetti said that he buys stuff from miniatures by Eric, and he says they're resin.
Resin. And it's hard resin.
Yeah, some resin you can get different durometers that tells you how hard it is.
So what I had to end up doing with this board, which I normally don't do, is I had to separate the halves. I had to pull the top half off and leave everything on the bottom so I could get my tweezers in there and put them little brass tabs through that hole. And I know my big hands are covering it up, but I'm going to show you everyone in a second. So I got them in, give it a little squeeze. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pop them trucks in before I tighten down on them screws for the chassis.
Now you saved the light board?
Yeah, I saved the light board. I put it back in the box. That's going back to the owner. That's normally what I do. So this way the owner can decide. But me, I have a whole box full of light boards. I just keep them just in case. All right, so now you can see at the end of my tip of my knife, that's them little tabs I'm talking about. And that's as close as I can get with my camera to show you. So a little different this time. So now what I'm going to do is going to put it up on the main. We're going to select decoder, stock decoder address number 3, and we're going to give it a quick test. Check it in both directions, make sure it's running. Check my headlights, make sure they're working, just so I know that everything's running good before we get any further.
Before you button it up.
No, because now we're going to go program this decoder. And this time around, pause the video, Barry.
All right. All right, we're paused.
Barry, you're on mute.
We're
okay.
paused.
All right. So this time, I did the programming for the decoder using the Digitrax system. This time, we're going to use the JMRI system. So now, before we go to this next scene, I have to apologize. The computer in my train room is an archaic beast, and it would not take my video capture program. I went to go start it, and it laughed at me and turned off. So what I did is I set up my camera next to the monitor, and we videotaped. So I apologize for the low resolution, but that's the best we can do.
That's all right. Ralph Renzetti, before we start, what powders are you using again?
Bragdon Enterprises, the weathering powder, same ones from last month.
I like the Bragdons better than some of the other ones just because they have the micro adhesive in them, so they tend to stay in place better.
And you know, if you do it that day and you do a lot of handling on it, you can wear them off.
Yeah.
But if you just let it sit overnight, they're on there. Like I was handling this unit today, actually. Like we're a week later, you can't even nothing coming off on my hand. So it really works. Just got to let it sit overnight. That's the key with these powders.
I took Ralph's advice and I went to Walters and I bought the AIM powder set.
AIM?
Yeah.
How do you like it?
It hasn't come yet. I haven't tried it.
Okay.
Keep us
in the loop.
Absolutely.
This is how you do YouTube, Sammy. This is live.
All right, and Barry, go ahead and hit play. All right, so now we're going to be doing programming with JMRI. So here is my JMRI screen, and this is my roster. This is not my unit, like as I indicated, but we're going to go ahead and make a unit entry. So the first thing we do is we hit New Loco. We're going to read from decoder type, and it's going to give you a whole list of the Digitrax decoders. So you're going to scroll down the list, and you're going to select your decoder that we're using, and that's the 163A0. And then that brings us up to our next screen. So we're going to go over, I'm going to make a roster ID. Now, if you look at my roster, I'm very particular. So I put in the name, so I could just see it, I put the road name, the model number, and the unit number, all in the unit ID. Once I start typing. There we are. So I'll make it my ID. One 360. Now I'm trying to think about what I'm doing. All right, so now I'll bring up the this page here, I'll go to my roster entry. I'll fill out all the data in these blocks, so you can put in your the unit numbers and the model number and all that stuff. And we're going to go over to our basic tab, and I want to change the address to 360. I think here I made a misstep. I put it in the primary address, and it didn't take, so I had to redo it. And you should put it in the active DCC address. See, it came up with its own number because I didn't put it in the active. So when you're changing your programming your unit numbers for the decoder address, put it in the active DCC address block.
Well, something you need to note there too. 360 is in the long road number area. Digitracks,
okay.
anything over 127, I think, is considered a long address. For
long
Digitracks,
address.
yeah.
So you got to do the extended.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now I'm trying to figure out what I did wrong, and then I save it, and I go back and check my roster, and I see that it didn't take, so I have to go back and reprogram it again. So, because you can see the DCC primary address is 0, so I'm going to go back and reprogram it.
Yeah, that was probably because you had the short address picked when you tried to set the address.
Yeah. And I'll write write changes on the sheet, and it took.
And it took.
And it's good. So now we're going to take it back to the main. Got my throttle dialed up 360, and we're just going to run it through a function test to make sure everything looks like it's running good. It took the address. We didn't fry the board, and we're moving in the right direction. I like to check my headlights. That's a good indicator that you're running everything's going good as your headlights. Now we're going to go back to our bench, and we're going to start reassembly. So I'm going to take and put the fuel tank on. I'll put that light shield back in. Then I'm going to go ahead and put the shell on. With this, you're just going to push down, and you'll hear the click. Once you hear the click, you know you're in. Now, one last test. I want to put it back on the main, make sure we didn't dislodge anything when we were putting on the shell. So we give it a quick function test back and forth, and we see that everything's good. We do tight shots so you can see the headlight. It's actually working. I just do that to make sure that the LED's lining up with the headlight plastic, so it's showing through. And so now we're moving on to our final weathering phase. So now what I'm going to do is I'm break out my weathering powders. We're using black soot. We're going to be using some earth tones. We're going to be using grays. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attack that hood. I'm just going to really mess up this locomotive, because you know, from these pictures you could see that it was just pure dirt and grime.
So you basically use a photograph of the real deal to give you an idea and a kind of a scale, well, not really a scale, but an idea of what it looked like when it was road dirty.
Correct. I just did a Google search on Milwaukee Road GP38, and you get a bunch of different pictures pop up, and I just went through and looked at different ones, and yeah, there were some real filthy units on the Milwaukee Road right towards the end in what, 84, 85.
Now, do you use the photographs exclusively, basically right to the, right down to the, you know, copy it right from the scale, replicate it? That's the word I'm looking for. Right?
If I can find the road number that I'm working on, if I can find that picture in the area that I'm working in, I will print that out and have that on my desk so I can see it.
Very good.
This particular unit, this 360, I could not find any pictures of 360. So this is kind of just a flavor of kind of everything in the class, all 16 GP38s kind of just a little bit from each and put them together.
Right. What I think is really pretty good or cool about this, Joe, is that you're not a real Milwaukee road fan, Conrail kind of guy, but you actually, researched about the road, the company itself to get an idea or feel for it. So when you would, I think that has a lot to play with it, into the weathering of the engine, that they were on the bankruptcy end and stuff like that, to give it that really worn look.
Yeah, and I may actually be a Milwaukee Road fan after this. I love the way this unit came out. It came out so well. It was fun. It was fun. It was something I've never done before, and that's what model railroading is about. Let's keep it fun, guys. Let's get out there and do something different. So that's why I threw this one in here. And that's another good thing I like about this hobby, is finding out all this corporate history. Who bought out who? When did this guy go bankrupt? And who acquired these units? And I found some really great pictures of 87, 88, 89. When the Sioux Line acquired the remnants of the Milwaukee Road, they started patching these units out. And there were some of these units into the 90s. They still had the orange. You can find some real interesting patch jobs in the Sioux Line configuration, but the orange and black had all faded and just rusted away, and it was just the big black patch units that said Sioux. So these units have some good history behind them.
There's a couple of questions here for you, Joe. One from...
let's pause it then. Let's pause it and do some questions.
Okay. All right, she's paused. So we have from Northern Star Railroad Lines, how do you prevent the loose pastels from working their way into the motor? And Joe G, I might have missed it, but what type of weathering products do you use? And then when you're done weathering from Mike Simons, do you use a dull coat?
No. Okay, Mike. With the Bragdon Enterprise powders, no dull coat, none needed. Let them sit overnight, and I can go get a unit off my layout right now. We can sit up here and rub it, and it's not gonna come off. So no need for the dull coat, and that's kind of what this company sells these powders on, is that little micro adhesive that you talked about, Barry.
Yeah.
Most of I've really, trust me, I'm sitting here with you gentlemen. I ain't getting paid nothing from this Bragdon Enterprises. I don't get endorsements from them or nothing, but I've used their product and I really like it. So that's my pastels I've kind of stuck to, and that's what I'm using for weathering. With my cars, go ahead, Bob or Bill. Go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but Ralph Renzetti has made it a point, and I have to agree with them. They're not pastels; they're Bragdon paint pigments.
Sorry, I keep making
that's
that
all right.
mistake.
That's all right.
Yes, they're not pastel powders. They are weathering powders. They call them, right? Am I right, Barry? Is it called weathering powder?
They're made from actual paint pigment versus like the chalks you would get from chalk pastels. So they grind the pigment up and add the adhesive in, whereas chalk is literally just pieces of the pastel chalks ground up.
So primarily, to answer the question, is I'm using the Bragdon weathering powders. I do experiment, or I do use artist oil paints to do like rusting on the roofs. And if you use some turpentine, you can get some good runs in that. You can get the bleeding and stuff. So that's what I'm using for weathering. And the airbrush. It's just that is the best weathering tool out there. My personal opinion. I could do so much with an airbrush, and I think I've demonstrated now in the second Unity that the airbrush, I think, is just a vital base for your weathering. And then you could do anything with the weathering powders, or if you don't want to use the weathering powders, you want to use the old-fashioned pastels with dull coat, and yes, you could still do all these techniques with just pastel chalks. So that's kind of where my weathering is. So we got the answers. Mike Simmons' question, Ralph Renzetti's, and what was the other question?
It was how do you prevent the loose pastels from working their way into the motor?
That's why whenever I'm doing any of these weathering powders, I'm making sure everything's all buttoned up. I got no exposed frame. Everything's all buttoned up. And if you notice, I'll put it on the top And that chassis, that shell is all solid. There's no holes. I don't have BLMA see-through grills or anything like that. So everything stays on the top, and I work it, and when it's getting too much, where I just tip it over and dump it on my work mat. So you see on my work mat, I had all that big pile. And if you have to, don't be afraid. Just grab either your airbrush or just go like this and just blow it right off and get all that excess off out of the way. So that's how I keep it out of the motor. Now, if you do get it in the motor, well, you know, I'll leave that. Remind me about that when we get on the video. I'll go back to it.
All right. You're ready to go back to the video now?
Yeah, so let's talk about the nose on this locomotive. Go ahead and start it up there.
All right, we're going now.
So as you can see here, I wasn't happy with the color on that nose. It was just too orange for me. It looked too much orange dirt. So what I did was I went in there with this gray tone. It's not the soot. It's like a gray tone, and I mixed it with the soot just to lighten it up, and it kind of color corrected that. So what I'm trying to tell you is, if you, in your airbrushing, you don't like that color, you know, that little tint, don't worry about it. Let it dry. We're just going to color correct it with these weathering powders, and you could see it came out really well. And it's kind of just that layering technique that we're doing, is you're just adding another dynamic on top of it, and the powder kind of overtook that orange color. So you got to work in the counters. You know, you're countering your orange with the black. That's what we did there. So I wanted to get some runs down the side of the long hood, and that little stubby brush that I was using wasn't doing it. So I switched over to a long, in the next frame you'll see, I switched over to a long soft brush. I was able to streak it up and down to continue. Because if you look right now, them streaks kind of end at the handrails because they can't get on the other side of the handrails. Now, the easier port would have probably been to just take the handrails off. But, you know, with these little in-scale jobs, I don't like doing that because you're going to break stuff. And I like to try to keep them together as much as possible.
Well, that makes sense.
Especially when it's somebody else's.
Exactly.
If I break my own. So I'm just going in here with some earth tones. I'm touching it up. Doing my final little steps. I want to get a little more splash up on the side sills there. The weathering powders are really nice because they portray that dry dust look. And that's it. You can see I got a nice long soft bristle. I was able to pull that powder up to get them runs. It just, I mean, the airbrush looks good, but you put them powders on there, it just looks dry. It looks like dust.
Yeah, it's like it's picking up some details from the latches and the door down the bottom and stuff.
Yep. I'm just blowing off the excess too. And you can see there's a good shot of the nose. We fixed that little orangey look to it. So, and I'm just going back there touching up just a tiny bit. I was going to try to experiment with it. They had this really light gray. I thought it would look cool, but what it did, it just counteracted the black soot. It was like the opposite of the black soot. So I was like, I just put the black soot back on, and I'm mashing it into the walkways there too. Do one little quick glance around, and we're gonna take it back over to the. No, I guess not. Yeah, I missed one more spot. I missed. All that excess powder on the walkways, I just mashed it in there. All right, so this is a step that I added this time. The last time we did our unit, the MP15, I had a little trouble off camera with the way the unit was running. And it was just a little dirty, probably from our weathering powders. We picked up some stuff. So this time, what I made sure we did is I put my Mintrex wheel cleaning brush on there, cranked it up to full power, ran it, and cleaned them wheel treads off. Now I'm using Conductilube. Conductilube, I'm putting one tiny little drop per axle point, and that's going to help clean out them contacts of all that powder. Now, the question before was, what if you get powder in your motor frame? Same thing. This conductor lube, take your unit apart and put one tiny drop on each end of the motor bearing. That's it. Don't be using oil. Don't be using, I've heard crazy stuff people use. Conductor lube. That's it. If you put too much stuff on there, you're just going to compound the problem because you're going to pick up all the road dirt and make it worse. So here we are. I'm going to start the unit running because I've got to get that conductor lube time to run out. So I just put it out on the main and let it go. I let it run for about 20 minutes. By the time it was done, the thing was running like a Swiss watch.
A Swiss watch?
Yes, sir. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. People we'll watch the pictures first.
Before.
Ugly looking locomotive.
That's so ugly.
I love that shot. It's a mean looking paint job.
Alright, looks like our video is done.
Thanks for watching. Camera and editing by Joe.
Yeah, we're professionals here.
Yeah, we're not no pea soup operation.
I have to admit, that turned out so beautifully, Joe.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. A lot of fun. Had a lot of fun with that unit. I think Matt's going to love it when he gets it on his layout. So,
Tony Bowen wants to know: does conductor lube leave any kind of residue on the rails?
Depending on how much you put on. If you go, like I had one unit that was giving me a little trouble with squealing, so I put one drop on, ran it, still squealing. I put 2 more drops, and then it turned out to be too much. And I started getting some leakage out of the bottom of the frame, and it did deposit some on the rail. So, but you know, if you know about it, you know, just run your dry cloth across it, or you just wipe it off. Or I use Aztec Model Industries track cleaning cars. I just put the cloth wheel on and let it wipe it off. But the conductor lube it's just for ongoing maintenance purposes. I usually once a month I'll put little drops on them to keep them clean, and that's it. The only time I'll take a unit apart to put any inside the unit is if I hear something or if it's really running binding like so. Because Tony brought up a great point. You put that out, it's got to go somewhere. It's going to go on your layout.
Yeah.
True, very true. Split Rock 323 says on a short hood on front door side, the nose will be shining. Crew members rubbing their coats and such on it as they get up and down the train. Yes, that's very true. He also comments, nice tip about cleaning wheels, great idea. Randy's Rock and Roll Railroad, Makata, good job, looks great. Ralph Greenwood, great vid, Joe. Pop, another excellent job, Joe. Northern Star Railroad lines, very nice. Very nice. I have to admit that. Very nice. It was.
So where do you get the conductor lube at, Joe?
I got it through MB Klein.
Ah, okay.
Just go to the website, put in conductor lube, and it pops right up.
Yeah.
Best. I think it's very light. It's not. It's got a nice light consistency, so it's not real greasy, but it's really made. I think it came out of the slot car racing hobby. It's really made. I think that if you get it in the motor bearings, it's not going to short out or anything like that. So that's why it's conductor lube. It's conductive. So that's I picked that up a while ago. I've been using that for about 10-15 years.
Oh, very cool.
Michael Desmond says, great video show. Olivia and Michael liked it too.
Thanks, bro.
That's your brother, Joe?
That's Mike. That's my brother.
Hey, welcome aboard, Mike. Olivia and
Michael.
My son's name is Mike.
Yeah.
Good for that. Good for that. This is a continuing series with Joe Desmond and Into the Locomotive Shop, and hopefully on next month's show, could you give us a little hint of what we're going to be doing next month, or is it
one word? Sound.
Sound. I like that. I like that sound.
This I can't wait for.
I like that sound. You know, we're doing the N scale here, and this Saturday on the 21st, we're going to be doing the HON3 with Troy, along with special guest Steve Montgomery. But a lot of you guys out there, our e-magazine is coming out in November, and since it is November and N for November, the issue is going to be dedicated solely to the N scale modeling. It's the entire issue, from what I understand, is going to be dedicated to that scale. So awesome. it's an what we would say it's an N scale pop-up-a-loser.
There you go.
Going on. So you guys you N scalers out there who always say you're always underrated or you know, not represented, we're representing now, bro.
Now.
We got you out there now. So and then we got to get the other guy. You got to get we have going to you know, looking for some G scale guys out there. You know, he's got locomotives and everything. So you know, and stuff like that. So if you know anybody, you know, give us a heads up. You know, get in touch with them. Let me know, because I'd really like to have the G scale guys, Lionel guys on, stuff like that. But that's what JD, the editor-in-chief of the e-magazine, YTMB e-magazine, is doing for November. If anybody out there, Joe, he specifically sent you an email asking if you'd be interested in writing an article for him in having it put in there. And if there's anybody else out there in the community that would like to contribute to the e-magazine, not necessarily for the N-Scale magazine issue that's coming up now, but at any topic at all, you know, be more than happy to send it along to JD and his crew. They'll make you look like you're Hemingway, Mark Twain, you know, one of the greatest.
I'll testify to that, Bill.
You see how I speak. That's how I write. So he's turned some of the stuff into masterpieces on my end. So greatly appreciated. But again, this series that we're doing with Joe Desmond, and also I believe we have something coming up with Ralph Renzetti on weathering, and the continuing series, you know, with the Adreno and stuff like that, and also with Andy and Miles on the fine scale build, and Barry on the fine scale build. So we're trying to put a lot of content out there, trying to get cameras on desk again, and trying to do the whole, you know, 9 yards with everything involved, and kind of bringing it back to the table and hands-on modeling and weathering and stuff like that. So, you know, it seems pretty exciting. Got some pretty exciting guests lined up in the next couple of months. I won't tell you because they said yes, but then they said no, and then they said yes again. So, you know, I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag until I find out exactly what their situation is. But if anybody out there, oh yeah, and don't forget the 2-rail old scalers. Definitely, AJ, I definitely want to get you on. I want to get you on the show. I want to get, you know, that's absolutely something.
That would be an interesting. That'd be something interesting for the live show, because that's a very unique segment of O scale modeling. Is prototype scale O scale.
It is. I just remembered. I promised John I wouldn't do this, and I did it.
Come on, Brooklyn. You know you can't help it.
I got to put my hands behind my back because I clap too much. It's a New York thing. It's a New York thing.
Okay.
It's a New York thing. But other than that, if there's yeah, the 2-rail, I'm looking to get the lofty N scaler on. I've been in touch with, his name is Curtis. If anybody hasn't seen his channel, he's just got a YouTube channel. He's called the Lofty N Scaler. He's building a loft in the he's building a loft. He has a loft, and he's building an N scale railroad in the loft.
Very nice.
And yes, and it's pretty challenging. He's a professional photographer, and he uses his skills as a photographer to do these videos. And I have to say, they're very, very well done. Is the N scale lofty N scale modeler, and he's getting back into the hobby, and He's going to build this this N scale layout. So I'm in touch with him. I've talked to him, and he's going to be on the show because he's going to show us his his progress, how he got back into the hobby, where he was away from the hobby, and stuff like that. So stay tuned for that. We got a lot of exciting things coming up on YouTube Model Builders, and we want you guys to be a part of it. And again, Scale Model Trains in Colorado Joint Line. Nice to have you back. Haven't seen you for a while. Hey guys, Scale has been growing quite a bit in recent years. It would make a great segment. Terry Terrence would make a great guest, a good guest. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We will definitely look into him. I'll write his name down and we will be in touch. And Colorado Joint Line, if you could pass his information on to us, on to me at South Brooklyn, SOUTHBKLYN @gmail.com, I would greatly take that into and get in touch with him. And Terry Terrence, yeah, I'm writing it down as we speak. Anyway, November we got the e-magazine coming out, and in it is going to be dedicated to the N-scale modeler. And tomorrow night on the 19th we have Johnny's show, Thursday night show. What was it called again?
The Rail Chat Live.
See, look at this.
Rail Chat Live.
Yeah, with John. And the community is invited. It's a live forum. You guys can jump in and definitely be a part of it. And Saturday night is a live show with me and Barry, and we'll be hosting with Troy and Steve Montgomery. Troy will be giving us an update on his layout, and Steve Montgomery will be alongside him to talk about the structures that he built for his HON3 layout. And Joe, I just want to thank you again for a very informative, very, very entertaining evening. It was. I could see the hard work, and I also can see the passion that you have for model railroading. It's well done. I can see the detail.
Thank you for having me on and having me do this. It's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it.
I'm glad you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I thank you very much for being a part of this. Barry, thank you once again for your directorialship, and
always, my friend.
And to the community out there, stay strong, stay good, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys on the radio. Take care and God bless.